Snow had begun to fall again, soft as ash, whispering down through the bare limbs of cottonwoods. I hadn't meant to be out that far past dusk, but the sky turned quicker than I figured, and my horse, Bo, had thrown a shoe near the dry creek bed. So I walked, saddle in hand, boots crunching frost, the cold setting into my coat like regret. That stretch of prairie wasn't meant for souls after dark. It was ghost country, silent, stripped clean by wind and time. I was 4 miles out from the nearest town, maybe more, when I saw them. 2 little shapes hunched together beneath the wind-scoured trunk of a fallen juniper. No movement at first, just a color that didn't belong. Linen white dresses, too, thin for a night like that, clinging to bones and shadows. I stopped dead, heart pausing. They didn't look up. I stepped closer. They were children. Twin girls. No more than 7, 8 at the most. One of them was holding the other in her lap, arms wrapped tight, as if her little body could be enough to keep the cold from eating them alive. Their feet were bare, legs, scratched red from brambles and frostbite. "Hey there," I said gently, voice breaking the quiet like glass. The one on top lifted her head. Tangled blonde hair stuck to her face. Her eyes were too large for her cheeks, dark with something I couldn't name. I dropped my saddle in the snow and pulled off my coat. "You're all right now. I ain't gonna hurt you." They didn't move. "I'm Wade," I said. "Wade Harlan, just a man trying to get back to town. You two out here alone?" The other girl stirred then. No voice, just her tiny hand curling around her sister's arm. I could see now. One of them had a torn sleeve, the fabric stiff with something dark. Blood, maybe. I wrapped them both in my coat, crouching slow so I didn't startle them. They were freezing, bones and breath. No weight to them. The one who'd lifted her head was trembling hard, but she didn't pull away. She just stared at me with eyes too old for her years. "Can you ride?" I asked, glancing back toward Bo, who stood waiting with a lowered head. They didn't answer. "I'll carry you." The wind kicked up again, pulling a sharp cry from the trees. The girl flinched. The other one, still silent, burrowed deeper into her sister's side. I got them on Bo, rode slow with one in each arm, tucked tight against me like kindling in a storm. They didn't speak the whole way. Just breathed in short, fast bursts. When we made camp that night, 1/2 mile from the old rail trail, I built a fire and gave them what little food I had left. Jerky, 1 biscuit, water warmed on the flame. They didn't touch it at first. Then, slowly, the one who'd stared, who I'd begun to think of as the older twin, reached out and broke the biscuit in half, gave the bigger piece to her sister. Kindness, even in a child so close to dying. I laid my bedroll across the snow and sat back, close enough to keep the fire going, but far enough not to scare them. It was quiet again, just crackling logs and the sound of frost melting from their skin. That's when she spoke. A whisper. Barely sound at all. He said he'd come back. I looked up. Her eyes were on the fire. Mama's still bleeding. My chest went tight. The younger one turned into her sister's side and began to cry. No sobbing, no sound, just tears sliding down a filthy cheek. I didn't ask questions. Not then. I just looked at the fire a while longer, letting the words settle into me like snow on shoulders already bowed from years of carrying too much. Whatever had happened to them out there in the cold, it wasn't chance that left them alive. It was a message. And now it was mine to carry. We reached Cold Hollow just after sunup, the town still rubbing the sleep from its eyes. Bo's hooves clapped against the frozen dirt road, steam curling from his nostrils. I cradled the girls against me, both wrapped in my coat, their heads resting like fallen feathers on either side of my chest. The sheriff met us before we even reached the general store. Doyle wasn't a cruel man, but suspicion clung to him like dust to boots. He was broad-shouldered, silver in the beard, and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who didn't believe in coincidence. "What's this, Wade?" he asked, hitching his thumbs in his belt as he eyed the girls. "Found 'em out past Juniper Wash," I said, voice rough from cold and something else lodged in my throat. Alone, half frozen. The girls didn't look at him. The older one stared down at her sister's tangled hair. The younger one gripped her doll tighter. "You go out looking for 'em?" Doyle asked. "No, they weren't meant to be found." He studied me a moment, then nodded toward Miss Verna's house down by the church hill. "She'll know what to do." Verna opened her door before I knocked. Her eyes swept from the girls to my face, then back again, softening like butter, on a stovetop. "Bring them in," she said, already clearing blankets off a chair near the hearth. The warmth of her little parlor room hit the girls hard, their cheeks flushed, limbs twitching like newborn fawns. I helped them from my coat, and Verna eased them out of their filthy dresses. The younger girl's knees were blue with bruises. The older had a raw gash on her shoulder, scabbed poorly, like someone had wrapped it in the first thing they could grab. "Won't ask what happened yet," Verna murmured. "First comes tea and rest." She moved with practiced care, soft-voiced and gentle-handed. She'd buried 2 of her own children in the typhoid sweep, but the grief hadn't hardened her. It had hollowed her into something tender, like old wood weathered smooth by the river. I sat in the corner, arms crossed, unsure what to do with my own hands. The girls wouldn't let go of each other, not even for the warm bathwater Verna drew. She cleaned around their grip, humming something low. I remembered that tune. She used to sing it at the back of church, something about light finding the weary. When the girls were dry and swaddled in fresh linens, Verna brought them bread with honey. They ate slowly, eyes darting up every few seconds like small animals, unsure if the world had stopped hunting them. "You got names?" I asked quietly, kneeling beside them. The older one blinked at me. After a pause, she said, "Maisie." I looked to the other. She didn't speak, just leaned closer into her sister. "Her name's Clara," Maisie added, brushing a crumb from Clara's cheek. "She don't talk much. Not anymore." Verna glanced at me. Her face said more than her words ever could. Maisie set her plate down and wrapped her arm tighter around Clara's waist. Her voice was almost steady, but her eyes were too wide, as if bracing for something. "We was with Mama, in a cabin. He said he'd come back, but she got sick, started bleeding. Real bad. She told us not to open the door, said he'd come soon." She looked down. Her hands were trembling. Clara reached over and held them still. He never came. My mouth was dry. I cleared it softly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Who was he, Maisie?" She didn't answer right away. Her lips pressed together, then parted like she was tasting a secret before saying it aloud. Creed. The name landed like a pistol shot. I sat back on my heels. Jonas Creed. I knew the man. Everyone did. Big cattle ranch west of the Pine Ridge. Rich. Dangerous. Had men who did things he didn't want traced to his boots. I'd worked his fence line once, years back. One job, one paycheck. Never again. "You sure?" I asked. Maisie nodded. "He brought Mama out there. Said she'd clean and cook. But when she got belly big, he said she weren't his problem anymore." Clara curled in on herself, thumb pressed against the frayed edge of her doll. Her face was blank, but her shoulders told the story. Tight, afraid, used to being forgotten. "Varen," said a hand on my arm. "You can't go messing with that man, Wade. You know what kind of hornet's nest that'd stir." "I ain't planning nothing," I said, though I didn't believe it. That night, I stayed in the barn behind Verna's house. Bo rustled in the stall, and I sat in the hay, staring at the sliver of moon through the rafters. The name Creed clawed at my mind like thorns in a wound. Maisie's whisper, "He said he'd come back," echoed in the silence. But it wasn't just their pain I carried now. It was the fact that they'd been tossed aside like old cloth, as if little girls could survive the wild on their own, as if no one would care enough to ask. But I did. God help me, I did. Verna let the girls sleep through the morning. Her old hound curled at the foot of their cot, like a sentry that knew better than to move. I spent that time pacing behind her house, boots carving anxious paths into frozen dirt. The sky was iron gray, heavy with something more than weather. Maisie's words wouldn't leave me. Creed. The name was a splinter under my skin. I didn't owe those girls. I wasn't their kin. But I'd seen their eyes, heard the silence in Clara's throat, felt the weight of a child trying to be braver than her age allowed, and that was enough. I went to Sheriff Doyle by noon. He was sipping coffee on the porch outside his office, a rifle across his lap and a quiet look in his eyes. He must have seen the storm brewing behind my ribs because he sighed before I even opened my mouth. "You already know," I said. He nodded. "Creed's name's been on dying lips before. Never stuck. Maisie's sure it was him. I don't doubt it. But words from a child, no matter how honest, won't move the courts out here." I leaned on the rail, fingers digging. Into old wood. So what? He just walks free while those girls sleep with ghosts? Doyle didn't answer, didn't have to. He looked tired, like a man who'd tried and failed too many times. "Let me go out there," I said. "Just talk." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You don't go out to Creed's place and just talk, Wade. You go out there, you better bring a will." I stood a long while after he left, watching snow gather on the rooftops like time piling up on everything good. That night, Maisie woke from a nightmare. I heard her through the walls, choking sobs muffled in Verna's quilts. I didn't go in, not right away. But before dawn, I found myself in the chair beside their cot, watching Clara trace circles on her sister's arm to calm her down. Maisie blinked at me. Her face was pale in the firelight. "You're gonna leave, ain't you?" "No," I said. "I'm gonna make sure no one else ever leaves you again." She looked away, and for a second, I thought she didn't believe me. But then she whispered, "He had other men. They wore red scarves, like they was proud of what they'd done." The next morning, I saddled Bo before the sun cleared the ridge. I told Verna I'd be gone a day, maybe 2. Didn't say more. Her eyes said she understood. The ride west was long and bitter. The landscape turned from frozen pasture to rocky gullies, where fence lines vanished and men watched you ride from behind curtains of pine. I passed 2 of Creed's boys near the split in the canyon road. They didn't speak, just spat tobacco, and stared as I rode by. The Creed ranch was built to intimidate. Big house, black shutters, 6 outbuildings, all trimmed like a banker's pride. There was no charm to it, just power painted over rot. Jonas Creed stood on the porch when I rode up, broad-chested, graying, and smiling like a wolf who'd already eaten what he wanted. "Well, look what the wind dragged in," he called. "Wade Harlan. I figured you'd lost your nerve and settled into preacher work." "Didn't come." "To spar, Creed?" "No? Then what's your game?" "2 girls. Found 'em freezing near Juniper Wash. One of 'em says you left her mama bleeding in a shack." He didn't blink, just leaned against the post, brushing snow off his sleeve, like my words were dandruff. "Lot of girls out there," he said. "Can't save 'em all." She said your name. Names get tossed around, especially when folks want to blame someone with money. I stepped closer, my voice dropped. "You don't get to throw away children, Creed. Not out here, not while I'm breathing." He straightened, eyes narrowing. You coming here accusing me of something, Wade? Not yet. Then ride off while you still can. There were 5 men on the property, all armed. But I didn't flinch. I let silence speak louder than anything I could have said. Then, I turned and rode back, the wind at my back and Creed's laughter trailing like smoke behind me. I didn't have proof, but I had purpose. And in the West, that was sometimes enough. The wind shifted as I rode back into Cold Hollow, warmer now like the land itself had exhaled. Snow still clung to the roofs, but it had softened around the edges, dripping slow and steady from eaves like a clock unwinding. Verna met me with a look that asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. I just shook my head and told her the girls needed a new pair of boots each, and maybe a comb with teeth that didn't snap off in knots. She smiled a little. You didn't get shot. That's something. Maisie was at the window when I walked in. Her hair was braided back now, though it still curled in wild wisps around her ears. She looked older already, still small, still afraid, but now holding her shoulders like they belonged to someone ready to face the wind. Clara was curled up near the fire with the hound, her doll tucked under her chin. She didn't stir when I stepped in, just pulled her knees closer to her chest. Did he say sorry? Maisie asked. I knelt by her, not pretending. No, he didn't. She nodded like she'd expected it. Then what now? Her voice didn't tremble, not anymore. It had a quiet weight to it, like stone wrapped in cotton. I reached into my coat and pulled out the badge Doyle had pressed into my hand that morning. It wasn't mine, not officially, but it was a symbol. I ain't a lawman, I said, but I'm standing in one's place for now. Creed's men came after girls, after innocence. We don't need a court to know what's right. Maisie looked at the badge, then back at me. You're not gonna let him take us? No, ma'am, I said, not ever. Doyle had already begun whispering in the right ears. Quiet ranchers tired of paying Creed's prices. Town wives who remembered Verna's losses. Even the blacksmith whose nephew vanished 2 springs back while riding fence near Creed's land. By week's end, a jury of dust-covered men and sharp-eyed women had written a letter of claim. Creed's land would be split, his fences burned, his brand outlawed. He'd crossed too many lines, left too many ghosts, and this town, tired as it was, wasn't willing to carry one more. The morning we read the notice aloud from the steps of the general store, Creed's ranch house burned behind him. No one admitted who lit the match, but no one tried to stop the flames either. He left town that afternoon, riding east with 2 horses and nothing else. No one waved, no one spoke, just silence, thick and final. Maisie and Clara watched from Verna's porch. He's gone, Clara asked, her voice cracked like thawing ice. Maisie nodded. He's gone. I stayed. At first it was just 1 night at a time, then a week. Then I started carving a 3rd place at Verna's table. My saddle stayed by the door, but I didn't ride far anymore. Maisie started school come spring. She never let Clara out of her sight for the first few days, but over time, they learned to be separate without being alone. They shared stories with the hound and made up dances in the yard. They laughed more, cried less. One evening, months later, Clara came to me while I was fixing the garden fence. She had her doll under one arm and a drawing in the other. It was a picture of the 3 of us. Me with my crooked hat, Maisie holding a book, Clara with flowers in her hair. She said we should draw what safe looks like, she whispered. I took the picture in my calloused hands and stared at it for a long while. You draw this? I asked. She nodded. Clara, that's real fine work. She smiled, not the small, polite kind. A real one, wide and quiet, like the world had finally made room for her voice. I carried that drawing in my pocket every day after, and when people asked later if I was their father, I didn't correct them. Some families are built on blood. Others on broken pieces that fit just right when no one else dared to pick them up. We weren't what folks expected, but we were whole, and we were home.